Week 3, Day 1, Morning Nourishment, Daniel 1, 3-4. Then the king told the chief of his eunuchs to bring some of the sons of Israel, children in whom was no defect, who were good in appearance, who showed insight in all wisdom, understanding in knowledge, and apprehension in thought, and in whom was the ability to stand in the king's palace. Daniel 1:7. And the leader of the eunuchs gave them names. The book of Daniel has just 2 sections. The first section, comprising chapters 1-6, concerns the victory in their captivity of the young descendants, including Daniel, of God's degraded elect over Satan's further devices. This victory was over the demonic diet, chapter 1, verses 3-21, over the devilish blinding that prevents people from seeing the great human image, the totality of the human government throughout human history in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, chapter 2, over the seduction of idol worship, chapter 3, over the covering that hinders people from seeing the ruling of the heavens by the God of heavens, chapter 4, over the ignorance concerning the result of the debauchery before God and the insult to His holiness, chapter 5, and over the subtlety that prohibited the faithfulness of the overcomers in the worship of God, chapter 6. In this devilish temptation of Daniel and his companions, Nebuchadnezzar also changed their names, which indicated that they belonged to God, to names that made them one with the idols. The name Daniel, which means God is the judge, or God is my judge, was changed to Belteshazzar, meaning the prince of Baal, or the favorite of Baal, Isaiah 46:1. The name Hananiah, which means Yah has graciously given, or favored of Yah, was changed to Shadrach, meaning enlightened by the sun God. The name Mishael means who is what God is, but his name was changed to Meshach, meaning who can be like the goddess Shach. The name Azariah, which means Yah has helped, was changed to Abednego, meaning the faithful servants of the fire god Nego. Today's reading. The captivity to Babylon was the utter destruction of the testimony of God's elect in the worship of the unique God, Jehovah, by the carrying of some of the vessels of the temple of God into the land of Shinar, and their being put into the temple of idols. 2 Chronicles 36, 6-7. The king told Ashpenaz, the chief of his eunuchs, to bring some of the sons of Israel, including some from the royal seed and from the nobility, Daniel 1, 3-4. Among such sons of Israel were some young overcomers whom God used to gain the victory over Satan's devices. Satan might have thought that God had been defeated and that on earth there no longer was the worship of God. The elect of God had been defeated, and God's purpose on earth had suffered loss. However, God was not disappointed, for He still had some overcomers, Daniel and his companions. In His sovereignty, He had arranged for these young people to be taken to Babylon, where there were His overcomers. In principle, all the temptations that come to us are related to eating. Nebuchadnezzar's devilish temptation was first to seduce Daniel and his 3 companions, the 4 brilliant young descendants of God's defeated elect, to be defiled by partaking of his unclean food, food offered to idols. To Daniel, that choice food was actually the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That tree is something attached to Satan and even one with Satan, but the tree of life is something attached to God and one with God. To eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is to become attached to Satan. To eat of the tree of life is to become attached to God. When Daniel and his companions refused to eat Nebuchadnezzar's unclean food and chose instead to eat vegetables, they were actually rejecting the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and taking the tree of life. Thus, even in Nebuchadnezzar's palace, there were the two trees.